Hello everyone, this is Mini Ninja speaking, and what you're looking at here is not going to be a bootleg breakdown per se, but rather a review of The Chosen Ones. Yes, you heard me correctly, The Chosen Ones, aka Demoniacal Fit's version of the now out-of-print Figuarts Goku Black figure. As we're taking a quick look at the packaging here, I just want to give a quick insight of why I'm looking at The Chosen Ones rather than doing Demoniacal Fit's version of Vegito first. And that's not because this one fills in a particular niche because the original Goku Black figure is out of print and absurdly priced on the gray market right now. You're going at least 120 minimum as far as I can tell for the original color scheme. And thus, having something like this, which is available at least when I purchase it for 48 bucks, is pretty much a godsend if it's any good compared to the original, which we're about to do because we're doing a side-by-side comparison in this case, including a quick look at the box for this one. As you can see, the Chosen One's towers over it, and it even goes bigger than the Ultimate Fighter, aka Vegito, and it doesn't need to do it as a separate accessory pack, which, when we do this eventual review, I'll have some words about that later. But for now, the way we're going to do in this one is the real figure is going to be on the left of the footage, if I can keep it that way, and Chosen Ones is on the right. In this case, you'll have to forgive me, I'm missing some footage for the joint test, but honestly, the joint movements were pretty much the same. Good tight joints on the Chosen Ones, if not a smidge looser because my version of Goku Black is just stupidly tight in the joints. And in terms of the general detailing and paint, you're almost dead on most of the part. Maybe it's a little heavy-handed in certain bits like the gray gi of the Chosen Ones, but for the most part, you're doing about as well, if not slightly better, in terms of how the detailing has been handled on this clone figure, which I'm actually incredibly surprised on. As a bit of an anecdote to just kind of show how generally well this particular Chosen One's kind of clone figure compares to the original Figuarts, much like the original, I actually had to pull the ankle joint slightly out of the body in order to make it so I can get the Chosen Ones to stand, which is honestly the exact same thing I had to do with the original figure because both of them suffer from the exact same flaw of the ankles if you have them in the proper full way, not being able to stand properly because they don't have the range to properly lean forward enough in order to keep balance. Even as you see me doing a little bit of a very crude rotational on the Super Saiyan Rosy Heads, which the Chosen Ones is in hand in this case just for reference, you can see they've done a fairly good job of trying to recreate a bunch of the different things even if the camera doesn't necessarily pick it up. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the various accessories, namely the faces, the hands, and etc. And once again, real one is on the left, Chosen Ones is on the right, and as we kind of go down the list here, you can kind of see, for the most part, they tend to be fairly close to one another, if not slightly better in terms of the Chosen Ones. Like, in that case, the gritting mouth, or the cross mouth, is more defined on the Chosen Ones for the default head, and that makes it look a little better, if I'm being quite frank, at least in my opinion. And as we go down the Super Saiyan Rosy Head, the eyes on the one on the right, which is Chosen Ones, that's better defined. It looks a little cleaner. And this other head here is unique to this particular figure. Before we look at the hands proper here, there is one little variation I notice on the kind of energy blade on the Chosen One, namely that it's a little, especially if the camera has a good job of picking up in this case, there's definitely a little more of a whitish sparkle finish on that one, and it's also a little more translucent, which does tend to stand out on the camera a lot, but in person it still looks pretty decent. But another thing is, technically the energy blade in that one is also a tad smaller by a few millimeters. Is it a deal breaker? Hardly. Frankly, it actually will fit either set of hands just fine. And speaking of hands, if I didn't have this laid out the way I did in this particular bit of footage, I would honestly have a very hard time keeping these things separated because, honestly, in terms of both the general color and quality, I'm having a lot of time telling them apart. At the most, there might be a little bit of softer focus on certain hands, but for the most part, except for the exclusive hands you see on that bottom row right there, kind of the two open ones which are meant to hold an object, and this one special one for posing, you have a very hard time telling the difference. They even have similar defects on some of the hands, namely being extra seam lines, which could have been cleaned up. And if you take a look at the peg openings, for the most part, they are pretty much identical, and even the hand pegs themselves are about the same, so if you really did want to use the unique hands on the real figure, you probably could do that without too much of a hitch. They're about the same size. Can't say that for the heads, though. The heads won't be interchangeable. Now to talk about the big accessory in this case, which is why the box is so big. The Chosen Ones comes with a special scythe that is, I believe it used to be sold as kind of a separate accessory, but in this case it's been packed in with this one, and to great effect. Namely, in order to make the most use of it, you put on one, if not both of the open gripping hands, or kind of grabbing hands in this case, pop the top off, slip it in between the hands, and then put the top back on. Now, in this case, I might have noticed that one of the open hands was slightly bigger than the other one, so maybe I'm just putting it in the wrong order, but either way, once you get it fit in there, the scythe will stay in pretty well for the most part. Honestly, it's a very nice translucent look on it. It's quite pleasant to look at. A nice little accessory, and here's me popping on the other specialty hand that comes with this figure. Honestly, it's a good fit. Now, what isn't such a good fit in this case, and that's something I need to actually warn you about, is that the Rosy Head I found has the exact same issue here as the extra heads on the Vegito figure that the Demoniacal Fit put out had, namely that the head opening is too small to fit the peg properly without really forcing it in and risking the joint possibly. So what you need to do is the exact same fix with that one. In this case, I grabbed a 2.5mm drill, and after a few rotations, just to carefully remove a little bit of material bit by bit, you're able to get the head to properly fit on without too much hassle. Just make sure when you're doing the whole bit with the rotation of the drill bits, you're only using slight rotations and double checking every now and again. Otherwise, you risk making it a little too loose, and that's a whole new problem whatsoever. Now, as we take a look with everything fully assembled here, Chosen One stands at around 6.5 inches with the Rosy Head on, and as we're going to put it in a small lineup here, you can see that aside being slightly taller than the real deal, he still fits in fairly nicely with the actual figures as a whole, being Saiyan Rays on Earth, the super version of Trunks, as well as the original figure. It's honestly a very good fit. Maybe the torso is a bit extended as I mentioned earlier, but other than that, he's honestly a really nice looking figure. Everything works as he's supposed to, and basically, if you weren't able to get the original Goku Black Run figure when it came out and don't want to get the slightly off-color SCCC exclusive, for $48, this is honestly a really good fit for that particular gap in your collection. I can actually safely recommend this one. Thanks for watching, everyone. Catch y'all later.